Shalom. Kol Haloyim, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rachakwadash, Shanya Kabad. Gadawala Requab to Quanyam Nawa, Wa Shalayakim Nawa. That's the belongers to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone and Shalom, Wa Barakim, La Bakariam, Shaliyasharala. And that's peace and blessings to the elect of Israel. Really quickly, I just wanted to touch on a brief topic that the Spirit had me speak on this past Saturday, and I also made a video on it, a similar topic, I'll say, about a month ago. But through the Spirit, when I was touching on it this past Saturday, one of the brothers that was reading for me, Shamashawan, brought out in the DC camp, he brought out two precepts that I want to bring out and speak on concerning this topic, because I think it's really edifying, considering the times that we're coming into, and also giving us hope and putting us in the right mentality moving forward. So I just want to talk about this really quickly, concerning suffering and the suffering that we're going through, why we're going through it, and more importantly, the difference in our suffering versus what's happening to the 2/3 of our people. So I want to start here in the book of 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 14. It says, "But and if ye suffer for righteousness' sake, happy are ye, and be not afraid of their terror, neither be troubled." So the phrase here that I want to harp on is in the beginning. It says, "But and if ye suffer for righteousness' sake." Just like how there's a distinction drawn, there's a line drawn between the 1/3 and the 2/3, and we call ourselves the hopeful elect, part of that 1/3, I'll say, community, if you will. Then there's also a distinction drawn right here as well. It says, "But and if," that's the distinction right there, "ye suffer for righteousness' sake," because not everybody is suffering for righteousness' sake. Yes, you have Jake out there that's doing bad. And what the brother Shamash said this past Saturday, that hit me pretty hard, because when you think about it, it actually is true. You have 2/3, like 2/3 of our people that are suffering more. They're actually suffering more than what we're suffering in this ministry. But the difference is why you're suffering. The reason why you're going through this tribulation, these trials that the Heavenly Father, through His only begotten Son, is putting you through. You have people, 2/3 of our people, that are going through and catching more hell than we're going through, and they're not going to see salvation, because they're not going through that trouble for righteousness' sake. And ultimately, of course, the Heavenly Father put them in whatever predicament they're going through. As an example, you got a lot of our people homeless. A lot of our people are homeless and living outside. It's freezing cold, and that's where they live, outside, no shelter. You know what I'm saying? Under bridges, whatever, trying to find whatever small little place of comfort that they can get for the night. Same people not really eating, not eating full meals, barely probably getting one meal a day. And yeah, you can look at it and say that's their punishment, sure. And they're under the curses, sure. As a nation, as an entire nation, we all are. But it still doesn't take away from that the fact that Jake is still suffering. But you see, that's why we have to count ourselves blessed. And that's why it says, "Happy are ye," in verse 14. Watch what the NLT says for "happy are ye." Bible comparison. We have to count ourselves blessed that we've been called in this ministry, and the Lord has not forsaken us. The NLT says, "But even if you suffer for doing what is right," righteousness' sake, for doing what is right. And yeah, this verse is going into, you doing what's right and being called out for it. But of course, you're in the right, and you're being called out for doing something wrong. I'm just going to sum it up like that. But I'm taking this phrase and making the point here concerning the suffering that we're going through in our individual walks. So it says, "But even if you suffer for doing what is right, God will reward you for it. So don't worry or be afraid of their threats. But remember, the King James said, happy are ye. Right here in the NLT, it says, God will reward you for it. All the suffering that we're going through right now, whether it's persecution happening from our people as we strive to teach them, from other nations, from, I'll just say, financial issues. It can be you being accused for doing something when you actually are in the right? But in general, the suffering that the Most High is putting us through is for a reason, so that we can build up our spirits, increase our faith, and gain all those spiritual attributes that are going to come alive and allow us to flourish in these end days. So everything that we're going through, suffering in this ministry, is so that we can be rewarded. The suffering of our people, the other side, if you will, I'll just say, the 2/3, they're not suffering for righteousness' sake. And they're going to be destroyed. You know, that's the balance in Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. And that's really what I wanted to bring out in this video. Now I'm going to jump over to the book of 2nd Ezra 7 and read verses 17 and 18. It says, Then answered I and said, O Lord that bearest rule, thou hast ordained in thy law that the righteous should inherit these things. The righteous should inherit these things. What does it say right here? But, and if ye suffer for righteousness' sake, jumping back over, thou hast ordained in thy law that the righteous should inherit these things, but that the ungodly should perish. Once again, showing this distinction. Even if they're suffering, they're not suffering for righteousness' sake. They're not going through the same trials and tribulations that we're going through because they're in this ministry and, you know, demons are messing with them and trying to pull them out of this faith. Verse 18 says, Nevertheless, and this is the point, nevertheless, the righteous shall suffer straight things, meaning difficult things, and hope for wide, meaning we hope for good, for salvation, for deliverance, the kingdom of heaven. For they that have done wickedly have suffered straight things. So, okay, the righteous and the wicked have suffered straight things. But it says, reading on, and yet shall not see the wide. So the righteous and the wicked, and this is talking about our people, have suffered straight things, difficult things. We've gone through hard times. In general, as a whole, the curses are still upon our people. The difference is that we're suffering for righteousness' sake, and therefore we're hoping for wide, which represents deliverance, salvation, the kingdom of heaven. But the wicked of our people, even though they're suffering, and they can be going through the same exact things that you're going through, financial problems, car problems, difficulty with your spouse, I'll just say, or just other family and friends, right? Job situations, having problems with your managers, your employees, so on and so forth. Or I'll say associates, people you work with, co-workers, there we go, that's the word. They can be going through the same exact problems, but the difference is that the Most High, through His only begotten Son, is putting you specifically through that problem because He wants you to gain certain spiritual attributes that's going to build up your spirit and allow you to stand in these end days. Versus the wicked, and that's giving you hope. That's giving you hope for salvation, for deliverance, for the kingdom of heaven. Versus the wicked of our people could potentially be going through the same exact straight things that I just mentioned. But it's not for their benefit. More than likely, it's for their judgment because they're doing wicked. It's not to build up their spirit. At the end of the day, they weren't given the faith. So we count ourselves blessed. Happy are ye. You know what I'm saying? We're going to, Lord's will, receive that reward as long as we continue to endure and understand that the Most High is putting us through these situations, these trials for a reason. The other precept the brother brought out was 1 Corinthians 10 and 13. It says, there hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. And that's the reason I'm going to stop right there. The entire verse is good. It's one of my favorite verses. But that first phrase is the point right there. There hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. We're all going through the same exact thing. And it's ironic. We usually compare ourselves with each other in this ministry. Brothers that are actually in the faith, fighting alongside with you, going through the same exact problems. But when you think about it, 2/3 of our people, they're also going through those straight, STRAIT, things, problems. Everybody's going through the same thing. Nothing different. The difference is why you're going through it and what you're gaining from it. I'm going to jump over. Let me see something really quickly. If it's right here, I'll read it. It is 1 Corinthians 11, verse 32. It says, but when we are judged, we are chastened of the Lord, that we should not be condemned with the world. The world is going to be condemned by these nuclear missiles at the end of the day. That's the end all be all. But we're being chastened right now, going through those straight things right now, so that our spirits can be built up. There's a reason why we're going through what we're going through versus the 2/3 of our people that may be going through the same thing. But they're not being chastened of the Lord right now. It's ultimately for their punishment because they're being wicked and they're going to be condemned. But we're not looking to be condemned. That's why we're going through what we're going through right now. And of course, I have to read this precept, these few verses in Hebrews, the 12th chapter. Starting at verse 5 is good, but I really want to get right to the point. I'm going to read verses 10 and 11. I want to get right to the point. Hebrews 12, verses 10 and 11 say, for they, verily for a few days, chasten us after their own pleasure, talking about our earthly fathers, right? Yep. For they, verily for a few days, chastened us after their own pleasure, but he, the heavenly Father, but he, for our profit, for our profit, so that we're not condemned with the world. But he for our profit, that we might be partakers of his holiness, aka hoping for the wide, receiving the wide, right? Being delivered, even before deliverance happens, just being protected during the time of Jacob's trouble and being protected during the hour of temptation. And then, of course, after that, being delivered, being crowned, and then being a part of the kingdom of heaven, being joint heirs with Yahushai. Verse 11, it says, now no chastening for the present seemeth to be joyous, but grievous. And you have brothers that have been jobless, no money, bills racking up, in debt, homeless. You've had brothers going through these things. So, and of course, that didn't feel good. And that's why it says, but grievous. Nevertheless, afterward, it yieldeth the peaceable fruit of righteousness unto them which are exercised thereby. Exercised thereby, meaning you've gone through that particular experience. And out from that experience, you've gained these certain fruits. You've gained these specific spiritual attributes, which is the entire purpose, the entire reason why the Heavenly Father is chastening you. So that you can go through that trial and gain those attributes that are going to allow you to be able to stand and hold the faith firmly until the end. That's why we're going through the chastening that we're going through, the punishment, not punishment, I don't want to use that word. I'm going to use the word, again, straight things that we're going through, even if the 2/3 are going through the same exact thing. The difference is why we're going through it and what we're gaining from it. So I wanted to bring that point out and touch on those few precepts. And that's it. I pray that this was edifying to the elect. Call Haloyim, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rachakdash. Double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and blessings to the elect. Shalom.